Welcome to NTD News Today. Here are today's top stories. The Kremlin responds to a leaked phone call in which Special Envoy Steve Witkoff reportedly advised President Putin on how to pitch a Ukraine peace plan to President Trump. At least 14 people are dead after a massive fire tore through a Hong Kong housing complex. We have the latest. President Trump is pushing back hard after a New York Times report suggested he may be slowing down. The FBI is expanding its probe into Democratic lawmakers who urged the military to refuse what they called illegal orders. We have the updates. And if you're traveling for Thanksgiving, wet and windy weather may slow you down. We have the forecast.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Breaking just now, a major legal victory for President Trump. A Georgia prosecutor is dropping the election interference racketeering case against Trump and his allies. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee officially dismissed the case today. Peter Skandalakis is director of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. He decided to drop all remaining charges. He wrote in a court filing that it would not serve the interests of justice to keep prosecuting. Skandalakis assigned the case to himself earlier this month. He was unable to find another prosecutor willing to take it on. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis launched the case back in 2023. She alleged that Trump and his allies attempted to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. A Georgia court later disqualified Willis from prosecuting the case. President Trump is pushing back against a recent New York Times piece, calling his health into question. Trump cited what he described as his administration's achievements, including settling multiple wars and kickstarting economic growth. On Truth Social, Trump said all those successes require a lot of work and energy, saying he has never worked so hard in his life. But the New York Times piece published today suggested he could be slowing down. The article stated that Trump has fewer public events scheduled and is doing less domestic traveling than during his first year in office in 2017. However, the article mentions the president is taking more foreign trips. The article also says he starts events a couple hours later than in his first term and also mentioned bruising on his hand. Trump responded, saying there will come a day when he runs low on energy, but said that time is not now. He added that he just had a perfect physical exam and a comprehensive cognitive test. President Trump has indicated that peace efforts between Russia and Ukraine are finally gaining traction. Here's what the president said about ongoing negotiations, as well as a host of issues close to home as Thanksgiving approaches.
President Trump says negotiations between Russia and Ukraine are advancing, with U.S. officials preparing for high-level meetings with Moscow and Kyiv. It's part of a revised proposal aimed at ending the nearly four-year war. Speaking aboard Air Force One Tuesday, Trump said the U.S. will continue high-level diplomacy, but he won't personally meet with Presidents Vladimir Putin or Volodymyr Zelensky until negotiators reach further breakthroughs. Trump confirmed that what began as a 28-point peace plan has now been refined to 22 points.
Well, that was just a map. Well, that wasn't a map. That was not a plan. It was a concept. And from there, they've taken each one of the 28 points, and then you get down to 22 points. A lot of them were solved, and actually very favorably solved.
Trump said Europe will play a major role in shaping the final proposal and is deeply invested in seeing the war end. A major challenge, according to Trump, is determining a border that does not cut through towns or major infrastructure.
You want to have a border? You can't have a border that goes through a highway or a border that goes through the middle of a town, so that doesn't work. So it's a long, complicated process, and very, very sad because so many people are being killed.
The president also downplayed concerns about potential Ukrainian concessions, saying Russia is already advancing in disputed areas.
The way it's going, if you look, it's just moving in one direction. So eventually that's land that over the next couple of months might be gotten by Russia anyway. So do you want to fight and lose another 50, 60,000 people? Or do you want to do something now?
Turning his attention homeward, Trump Tuesday said he would prefer not to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies set to expire at the end of the year. though he may have to pursue broader reforms.
Somebody said, I want to extend them for 2 years. I don't want to extend them for 2 years. I'd rather not extend them at all. And maybe some kind of an extension may be necessary to get something else done, because the Unaffordable Care Act has been a disaster.
Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that his preferred approach is to direct money straight to individuals rather than insurance companies.
I like my plan the best. Don't give any money to the insurance companies. Give it to the people directly. Let them go out and buy their own health care plan. And we're looking at that if that can work.
The president said he has been talking to Democrats about health care reforms, though he declined to say which lawmakers are involved. Trump also briefly addressed foreign relations in Asia, saying he has held recent discussions with both China and Japan, focused largely on trade.
I spoke to President Xi about a lot of things, but trade and buying our farm products, and he said he agreed with me. I think we will be pleasantly surprised by the actions of President Xi.
Trump said he likewise had a great relationship with Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. At the annual Thanksgiving turkey pardon yesterday, President Trump used the lighthearted tradition to deliver a more serious message. He called on Americans to come together and renew their faith.
I hope all Americans will have the chance to enjoy the fellowship of family and friends and renew our faith in God's providence.
Trump touted a year of economic and social progress and what he described as a return to faith across the nation.
We have more people praying. The churches are coming back. I don't know if you've been reading that story, but religion is coming back to America.
And as always, the event ended with the official pardon, this year for turkeys named Gobble and Waddle.
Gobble,
Oh, there you go.
I just want to tell you this, very important. You are hereby unconditionally pardoned.
The annual pardoning ceremony traces its roots to the 1940s and became an official presidential tradition in 1989. For the White House, it was a moment of ceremony and celebration and a reminder to find gratitude this Thanksgiving.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump left the White House last night to travel to Florida, where they plan to spend the Thanksgiving holiday. Now into the weather. As travelers prepare to head home for Thanksgiving, they're facing a surge of wintry weather with snow, rain, and gusty winds sweeping across large sections of the country. A strong midweek storm will advance from the East Coast to the Midwest, bringing thunderstorms, rain along I-95, and wind-driven snow near major hubs like Chicago and Detroit. On Thanksgiving Day, tomorrow, forecasters say conditions will clear for the New York parade, but lake effect snow downwind of the Great Lakes will create pockets of poor visibility. The snow intensifies Friday when lake effect bands could stack up more than a foot of accumulation in parts of the Great Lakes region. A second storm system is expected to develop over the central U.S. this weekend, threatening widespread delays from Denver to Detroit. By Sunday, the coldest air of the season pushes into the northern plains. Meanwhile, another system will spread rain and snow from the Rockies to the Mid-South. A number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits unexpectedly fell for the third consecutive week, marking a 7-month low. Labor Department data shows a drop of 6,000 claims to roughly 216,000, the lowest number since April. The new jobless claims data might be surprising as scores of companies such as Amazon, HP, and Verizon have announced layoffs in the past several weeks. Jobless data is often revised, but it provides a glance at the overall labor market. Unemployment information for federal workers is tallied separately. Due to the government shutdown, the October jobs report has been canceled. The November employment data will not be released until late December. Some prescription drugs could cost much less for millions of Americans in a few years. Medicare officials say newly negotiated prices for 15 high-cost prescription drugs will bring major savings when they take effect in 2027. The Medicare health plan said yesterday newly negotiated prices will result in a 36% reduction in spending, saving around $8.5 billion. The reductions stem from annual negotiations created under the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, which allow Medicare to bargain directly with drug makers. Some of the steepest cuts include more than $4,000 off treatments for leukemia, lung disease, and breast cancer. Medicare covers more than 67 million people aged 65 and over, and those with disabilities. Coming up, President Trump sending his special envoy to meet with the Russian president as peace talks pick up steam. Can it make the difference? What do battlefield conditions suggest about the prospect of diplomatic peace? A warfare researcher joins us. The FBI is expanding its probe into Democratic lawmakers who urged the military to refuse what they called illegal orders. We have the updates for you soon. Good to have you back with us. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov confirmed today that presidential envoy Steve Witkoff is set to visit Moscow next week to meet President Putin. Ushakov also addressed a leaked October phone call between Witkoff and himself. Witkoff reportedly advised Putin on how to pitch a peace plan to President Trump during the call.
To hinder us. It's unlikely this is being done to improve relations, which are being built difficultly, built through this sort of contact, including on the phone. Regarding Witkoff, I can say that a tentative agreement is reached that he will come to Moscow next week.
The transcript was published yesterday by Bloomberg News. It shows Witkoff suggesting that Putin congratulate Trump on the Gaza peace deal and highlight Russia's support. He said Putin also should say he respects Trump as a man of peace. Ushakov did not dispute the authenticity of the transcript, but said some content was fake and declined to comment further due to confidentiality. Trump said yesterday the proposal to end the war in Ukraine has been fine-tuned and emphasized Witkoff's upcoming trip to Moscow. NATO and Ukraine have announced a joint initiative to accelerate defense innovation. They'll work together to tackle battlefield challenges and to help NATO learn new lessons in real time. The initiative will be called Brave NATO. Officials, it's the first joint NATO-Ukraine program of its kind. The first competition will focus on countering drones, strengthening air defense, and securing frontline communications. Teams of allied and Ukrainian companies will be eligible for joint grants worth over $10 million. After a successful pilot competition, NATO and Ukraine are planning to raise funding to over $50 million. And as mentioned, President Trump is ordering Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It comes as the U.S. is gaining ground on a peace deal. Here for more on this is Brent Sadler, a former Navy officer and research fellow for naval warfare at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you for your time, Brent. In terms of the prospect of a diplomatic end to the war, are things different now from when President Trump took office?
Absolutely. I mean, clearly, the last few months, you've seen a very forceful president willing to use the full might of the U.S. National power. Use it against Iran when he bombed their nuclear program, setting it back for a very long period of time. The current use of military against the drug cartels. If nothing else, it sends a clear signal to Moscow that there is new leadership willing to use the full might of the United States. And of course, at the same time, a pragmatism that we haven't seen in the past administration regarding trying to find a way to work forward. Things like mineral deals, as well as secondary sanctions on Russia's biggest economic supporters through oil purchases, such as India, and of course China, who also supports through industrial equipment that had been provided that have a dual use, military as well as civilian use. So clearly the context has changed in D.C., and I think also, I guess we hope to see a change on the battlefield that might also add additional pressure on Moscow to finally agree to a ceasefire.
Very interesting, Brent. In regards to what you're saying about President Trump being more willing to use military force in certain situations, just to clarify, maybe you're not suggesting that we can see American military intervention in this war in any situation to bring about peace?
No, absolutely. That's not the intent. But clearly the United States is willing to provide weapons such as Tomahawk as well as ERAM in large numbers, and to do so without constraints on Ukraine's use of those weapons. And so a greater sense of risk-taking and probably a deeper understanding of exactly the calculus, strategic calculus in Moscow that's at hand now in Washington, D.C., certainly makes it a lot more risky for Moscow to test this administration.
Understood. Now, how are you reading the battlefield? Do recent intense attacks by Russians suggest a lack of desire to end the war, any different from, say, previous phases of this war?
Oh, I think it's perhaps on the contrary, an effort to signal to the United States as the basically the guarantor who's trying to help force these negotiations forward, that Moscow and the price for Moscow's acquiescence is going to be higher. I think that's how I would read it. Not that they don't want to see a ceasefire deal work.
Can you explain a little bit more, just in layman's terms, about the point you're making?
Yeah, so both sides, the Ukrainians and the Russians, still have quite a lot of fight left in them. And both want to try to hedge their position or bolster their position so they can get more on the negotiations going forward. For Russia, it's ceding of territory that they can't get easily through the force of arms. And so by launching large missile attacks right now, as the terms of this negotiation are going forward, it makes it more likely, in their mind, Moscow's mind, that the United States might put more pressure on Ukraine to accept things that they otherwise wouldn't, because the threat is that Russia still has a lot more violence left to execute against Ukraine, and it's better to seal the deal now and give up more territory. Ukraine, of course, launched a retaliatory strike, perhaps the largest drone attack on Russia since the beginning of this war, so this actually goes both ways.
I see what you're saying. Even though we've seen intense fighting now nearly for 4 years, that Russia may be ramping things up because it could see a diplomatic end in sight and it wants to get the better end of the deal. Understood. Now, who are the stakeholders? It's the whole world, but that can make a difference in bringing about peace. This is the Europeans. Maybe they can exert more pressure along with American efforts. Or is this just too difficult a situation to remedy given the current circumstances?
Well, there's a very short list of those that matter in getting a meaningful and enduring peace, certainly getting a ceasefire signed in the near future. For Europe to make the point clear, they don't have much to provide in actual hardware for military or munitions. They do have financial resources they're directing now to buy and to help fund through the United States the munitions that keep the Ukrainians in the fight against Russia. But as far as it comes to the type of military power that's going to compel Moscow to lay down its arms and see that continuing this war is futile, that's the United States. The same is true. The United States is the one with the influence on Kyiv to also apply leverage to see that they also are compelled to agree to a ceasefire that can hopefully lead to a lasting peace. So it's really three parties. The two that are at war, Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, are the ones that matter most in trying to get the ceasefire done.
I see what you mean, Brent. Now, help us understand the who's who. I mean, we know the what's what, where the military regiments are and, so forth, but are the right people in the right places? For example, Ursula von der Leyen, Witkoff. I mean, with the personalities, do they all match up to get that end state?
Well, the most important is the orchestrator behind all this is the President of the United States, and it's clear that he's engaged. It's not been, I guess, a straight path for sure. It's taken a far lot longer time to get to this point. But again, I think the overwhelming part of that equation was both the Ukrainians and the Russians still had an entire fighting season that they wanted to see play out. And that's coming to a close now in the past few weeks. And I think we still have a few more weeks in this window that both sides see as a potential opportune time for a pause. But as far as the United States negotiating side, I think it's important to point out that you've got the Chief of Staff of the Army that's traveled recently with a senior enlisted advisor. This is perhaps partly to deliver messages, but also to take note of what actually is going on in the front line. Whatever happens in the terms of the ceasefire, when the fighting stops and the two armies have to pull away from each other no less than 20 kilometers from an effective line of control, to be clear, because of the nature of warfare with drones, it also must be one in which the front line is defensible in a manner that if the Ukrainians, or more likely the Russians, decide they want to reinitiate hostilities, doing so would come with such a risk and such a cost that it makes it very unlikely and improbable. So the devil is in the details. Having those with very deep military operational understanding, in this case, land battles, is a good thing to see in the recent trips to Kyiv by the Chief of Staff of the Army, his senior enlisted advisor, and we also know that the Secretary of the Army has also traveled recently and is engaging more directly with the Russians.
So interesting, that deep analysis that you bring to the table. And yeah, like you said, the chief negotiator, President Trump, I mean, the presidency, it says it adds 2 years for every 1 year onto your life. It's a lot of work. That New York Times article saying he's slowing down, but he's saying he's worked harder than he ever has. This is certainly a big task that is on his plate. Now, what are you watching for next? How can we get a glimpse of progress on a peace deal, given that the Russians have rejected earlier offers, basically saying they include provisions that are deal breakers?
Yeah, I mean, I caution against getting too engaged in the sausage making of the details and the leaking that's going on. That's being done with a strategic purpose to try to shape the negotiations that no one should be seeing on the outside. So for me, I'll be watching to see if there's a comment of the President of the United States before the end of the Thanksgiving holidays, signaling that he's willing to meet with Zelensky and or Putin. That'll be an indication that there is a ceasefire agreement that has a high probability of being signed by both Ukraine and Russia. Of course, the other thing I'll be watching for is the details and it's too absent in so far, even in the leaked conversations, is what will be the disposition of forces in the Black Sea through this ceasefire as well. In the previous drafts that have been leaked, there's been no comment on that. That is a necessary place to address, because without easy access to the global markets through the Black Sea, Ukraine's economy will always be under threat from Moscow.
Leaks upon leaks, all in this big mix. We'll have to see exactly how this plays out. Brent Sadler, thanks for coming on and sharing your insight with us.
Thank you, and have a good Thanksgiving.
FBI agents are seeking to interview lawmakers who appeared in a video telling members of the military not to obey illegal orders. Here's what we've learned so far.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one.
The FBI has requested interviews with 6 Democrats from the U.S. Congress who told members of the military in a video message that they can legally refuse to carry out unlawful orders. The FBI did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The move, earlier reported by Fox News, follows the Pentagon's threat to recall Senator Mark Kelly, a Navy veteran and one of the 6 lawmakers, to active duty to potentially face military charges. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called the lawmakers' video a seditious social media activity. President Donald Trump also accused the 6 Democrats of sedition. In a statement on Monday, Kelly dismissed the Pentagon's threat as an intimidation tactic. The other lawmakers who made the comments in a video released last week include Senator Elissa Slotkin, a former CIA analyst and Iraq War veteran, and Representatives Jason Crow, Maggie Goodlander, Chris DeLuzio, and Chrissy Houlihan, who are all military veterans.
The above-mentioned video does not specifically allege any illegal orders. After releasing the footage, lawmakers largely declined to cite specific examples during television appearances. They only refer to accusations that President Trump told officials in 2020 that they should shoot protesters in the legs. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said the White House supports the investigation into Senator Mark Kelly. She said, quote, "You can't have a functioning military if there's disorder and chaos within the ranks," and that's what these Democrat members are encouraging. And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave an update yesterday on a task force addressing issues at military barracks. Hegseth announced the project last month to improve living conditions for U.S. service members worldwide.
I tasked them with reporting to me directly, and I just got a report 10 minutes ago. An execution plan in their first 30 days. Not to plan for a plan, not to study or analyze. The mission was to find and fix now. To provide every warfighter a room that is clean, safe, and comfortable. Locks that lock, security cameras that work, furniture and mattresses that aren't older than the service members sleeping on them, and no mold. That doesn't take a plan, that takes action. And the task force is doing just that. Thanks to President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, the Department of War is investing more than $1.2 billion right now to improve barracks conditions.
In the first 30 days of the barracks task force, new furnishings and mattresses were installed in 81 barracks, benefiting more than 15,000 service members. Since October 27th, over $100 million in quality of life improvements have been implemented. Those include new door locks in 10 barracks for over 6,000 troops and upgraded security systems in 13 barracks, affecting more than 1,500 service members. Hegseth says monthly reports will track progress and ensure funds are spent on safe, clean, and comfortable housing. He emphasizes that living conditions directly impact service members' physical and mental well-being. The move follows reports of mold, electrical hazards, failing HVAC systems, and other issues at multiple bases, which even forced temporary relocations. Changes could be coming to Indiana's congressional map. Republican leaders in the state have decided to reconvene next month. Lawmakers will consider President Trump's call for redistricting ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. House Speaker Todd Huston says lawmakers will return to the State House on December 1st to consider redrawing the state's congressional map and other issues. The Senate is set to follow on December 8th to make a final decision on any proposal the House passes. The move marks a reversal for Senate President Pro Tem Roderick Bray. Bray previously said there wasn't enough support to pass a new map. Trump has been pressuring Republican-led states to adopt more GOP-friendly districts. He has urged Indiana senators to, quote, find the votes. Indiana Republicans currently hold 7 of the state's 9 U.S. House seats. And there's a newcomer running for the House seat soon to be left open by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who's running for New York governor. Sticker Mule CEO Anthony Costantino made headlines during the last presidential election when he erected a massive illuminated Vote for Trump sign atop his Amsterdam, New York factory. Now, at the same site and in front of a wall of Thanksgiving turkeys, he has launched his congressional campaign. NTD's Chris Bob was there.
I'm in Amsterdam, New York, where Anthony Costantino, the CEO of Sticker Mule, just announced that he is running to succeed Elise Stefanik in New York's 21st district.
I am here to ask for your support, your family support, and the support of, well, pretty much everyone else you know, as I've officially decided to run for Congress.
On this cold day after hours in upstate New York, Anthony Costantino gave away a number of hoodies as well as 2,000 turkeys as we get close to Thanksgiving.
Others gave up on New York. I stayed and built my business here to protect my community and my friends from the horror of economic decline.
Stefanik has represented this New York district since 2014, winning her 2024 re-election with 62% to 38%, making it safely Republican. So far, Costantino is running against Republican New York Assemblyman Robert Smullen. Both candidates are competing to position themselves as President Trump's preferred choice. At his campaign announcement last week, Smullen highlighted his experience working in Washington. He declared he is the, quote, only Trump-appointed conservative in this race. Meanwhile, Costantino says he is the only candidate loyal to President Trump who can use his business experience to promote the district.
I think the biggest thing I can do is get us top of mind. You know, that's an easy one. I think I'm more positioned to do it than anyone. We got to be top of mind so people even know we exist. Where, you know, President Trump talks about the forgotten people. We're sort of the forgotten district, and we got to be top of mind so people think about coming here and they see positive things are going. And I'm trying my best to lead by example. President Trump can't fix the country on his own. I can't fix NY21 on my own, but I think I'm more equipped than anyone to inspire other people to get involved and help, and that's the ultimate way to do things. The most exciting thing we can do to send shockwaves through the country is to turn New York red and show people that we're going to go in a different direction, that we're going to work on cutting costs, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, which is going to make people want to come back here and going to make us exciting again.
To watch the full interview, you can go to ntd.com. From Amsterdam, New York, for NTD News, I'm Chris Bob.
After Zoran Mamdani's victory in New York City, how is socialism being repackaged for a new generation? Tonight, Keri Smith joins NTD's Steve Lance for a candid, in-depth conversation where she shares her personal journey out of what she calls a woke belief system.
With woke ideology, there is no creator in that belief system, right? A lot of times what they're doing is telling people to worship yourself or worship the government. But it does lay out this sort of moral code for people in how to be a good person. And so a lot of woke people may think, well, I'm not religious. Really? Because you will stand here and argue with me until you're blue in the face that a man can get pregnant. Like, that's a very fanatical view. and deep down it's not true. And so it tells you like the way to be a good person is to say and do these things, and then all of these other things are bad. Like it inverts the natural order of things. It turns everything upside down, and I think it fills that gap for a lot of people if they're not connected to the divine, if they're not connected to God, to the natural order, to the natural law. It sort of gives them this fake way of discerning what is good and what is bad. It's just turning it upside down, though.
Smith opens up about the fear she faced leaving Hollywood and her former ideology and how language is being weaponized to reshape public thinking. Catch the full conversation tonight on One-on-One with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser announced yesterday she will not seek re-election. Bowser called it an immense privilege to have served the district over 3 terms. Her current term ends in January 2027. Bowser's tenure included a challenging year marked by federal interventions in the city. Those included an emergency order from President Trump that federalized the D.C. police. National Guard troops were also brought in for a crime-fighting mission. Bowser also worked to secure release of about $1 billion in city funding frozen during federal budget disputes. In her announcement, Bowser highlighted accomplishments in education, affordable housing, and pandemic recovery. The Trump administration has filed an appeal seeking to overturn a federal district judge's order. It requires pulling the National Guard out of Washington, D.C. President Trump has argued the troops are needed to address crime and violence in the city and to support federal immigration enforcement. Judge Giacob ruled the deployment exceeded presidential authority, violates the Constitution, and interferes with local control over law enforcement. Her decision is on hold for 21 days, giving the federal government time to pursue its appeal before the case moves forward. Up ahead, the British Parliament is in an uproar after the UK government budget was leaked before Parliament's official statement, an unprecedented occurrence. And at least 14 people are dead after a massive fire tore through a Hong Kong housing complex. We have the latest on that in a minute. I'm Kevin Hogan, and this is World Watch. At least 14 people are dead in a fire in Hong Kong housing complex. The blaze spread across 7 high-rise apartment buildings. Officials say others are still likely trapped. According to the director of fire services, a firefighter was among the 14 killed, and more than 16 people have been injured. About 700 people have been evacuated to temporary shelters. The raging fire quickly spread on bamboo scaffolding and construction netting around the exterior of the buildings. The blaze started mid-afternoon, and after nightfall, authorities upgraded it to a level 5 alarm, the highest severity. Firefighters deployed 128 fire trucks and 57 ambulances to the scene. And Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te said this morning that Taiwan will introduce a $40 billion supplementary defense budget to counter China's rising threat. Lai said history has proven that trying to compromise in the face of aggression brought nothing but enslavement. This comes as China ramps up military and political pressure. Lai said in August he hoped to increase defense spending to 5% GDP by 2030. Here's President Lai.
China's threats to Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific region are escalating. Recently, various types of military intrusions, maritime gray zones, and disinformation campaigns have been occurring in Japan, the Philippines, and around the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan, as the most important and most critical part of the first island chain, must demonstrate our determination and take on a greater responsibility in self-defense.
The death toll from floods in Thailand has reached 33. That's after 3 days of torrential rain that started last week, dumping record amounts on Hat Yai, Thailand's southern commercial hub. On Friday, the city received over 13 inches of rain, its highest in a single day for 300 years. Almost 25 inches of rain has fallen so far in the surrounding area. The Thai military has mobilized boats, helicopters, and its lone aircraft carrier to help with rescue operations. Authorities say floodwaters in many areas are receding, but currents are still strong. An uproar in the British Parliament. It comes after the budget forecast was leaked. The Office for Budget Responsibility apologized, but the controversy continues. The budget forecast was published before the finance minister delivered it to the Parliament, an unprecedented error for the annual event. The leak basically laid out the measures of a crucial tax-raising budget ahead of the official statement. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said questions about the leak were a matter for an independent watchdog.
It is my understanding that the Office of Budget Responsibility's Economic and Financial Outlook was released on their website before this statement. This is deeply disappointing and a serious error on their part. The Office for Budget Responsibility have already made a statement taking full responsibility for their breach.
Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuelan regime leader Nicolas Maduro are expanding. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez breaks down the links between the Maduro regime and major U.S. adversaries.
According to Nicolás Maduro, an indicted narco-terrorist, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, the leaders of China and Russia, sent him letters expressing their solidarity and support amid rising tensions with the United States.
It is impressive how a movement of solidarity is rising everywhere in support of the victorious effort of the indestructible people of Venezuela in the face of these threats, psychological, political, diplomatic wars, whatever they do. However they do it, wherever they do it, they will not be able to defeat Venezuela. We are invincible.
The U.S. government has designated the cartel of the Suns, the cartel that Nicolás Maduro is accused of leading, as a foreign terrorist organization.
Venezuela is run by a narco-terrorist ring that traffics drugs, weapons, human traffics as well, into the United States.
Top Venezuelan officials have been using the Venezuelan military and its installations to traffic drugs. The survival of the regime is the only thing keeping them from facing justice.
Hoy Marco Rubio, ustedes saben, sacó otro refrito.
Today, Marco Rubio, pulled out another rehash about the cartel of the Suns, that now it's a terrorist organization. Ridiculous. They're ridiculous. They repeat and repeat the story about drug trafficking, the drug trafficking story.
The regime is accused of killing over 8,000 civilians for resisting their authority. And unofficial results show that over 80% of Venezuelans voted against Maduro in last year's presidential elections.
So we know, we have information that maybe the top echelon of the military forces in Venezuela may be with Maduro, and they're going to flee with him. But the middle and lower ranks are with the opposition.
The Venezuelan regime has been economically propped up by China and Russia and has close ties with Iran and its proxy terrorist organizations Hamas and Hezbollah.
Venezuela has been the launching pad, the hub for our enemies. The Iranian, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Cubans, the Nicaraguans, people that hate the United States, and the only thing they want to do is do harm to us and to our young Americans.
It's important to note that the Venezuelan regime also provides oil at discounted prices to Nicaragua and Cuba, the only other two dictatorships in the region, and allowing for them to survive. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Moving over to Europe, the European Union is investigating Chinese fast fashion giant Shein. This comes after France found illegal items sold on the platform.
We talked to the French authorities, we talked to Shein, and we now have serious indications that indeed Shein may be posing a more systemic risks for our consumers across the entire European Union. This is why we have indeed sent a request for information just now to Shein, asking the company to send us two types of information. First,
the EU is asking Shein to provide information on what systems it has put in place to prevent illegal goods from being sold online and what it has done to prevent minors from accessing them. Based on Shein's answers, the EU may launch a proper investigation later. Earlier this month, France asked the EU to investigate how Shein was able to sell illegal items, including childlike sex dolls and weapons online. The French government also started a procedure to temporarily suspend access to Shein's online marketplace. But a Paris court announced today that the hearing for the case is postponed to December 5th. Shein has pledged to work with French authorities to address any concerns swiftly. And sweet tooths are debating their favorite Thanksgiving desserts. They are weighing in on how they feel about sweet potato pie versus pumpkin pie. Catch that in a minute. A debate is heating up ahead of Thanksgiving. Families across the country are voicing their opinions about which traditional pie is best for the holiday. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on their favorites.
They're arguably two of the most popular Thanksgiving desserts, pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie. Sugar Magnolia Takery owner Elizabeth Arnold makes both.
I would say the main difference is like the spice. So sweet potato is a lot sweeter. It has white sugar, brown sugar. And then the pumpkin pie is less sweet and more spicy.
Many stick to their favorites every Thanksgiving. Customer Joan Stringer prefers sweet.
Sweet potato pie. It's one that I make, it never fails, and my family loves it.
The two Thanksgiving favorites have more in common than not. They're similar in color, taste, and texture. Those similarities make them all the easier to compare, but they each have their staunch supporters. Lori Robinson says her family's choice is about nostalgia and tradition.
Pumpkin. I grew up eating it. My mom cooks it every Thanksgiving, Christmas, every time. So yeah, it's way better than sweet potato.
Sweet tooths might decide to have both sweet and pumpkin at their Thanksgiving tables. Graydon Smith says he doesn't have a favorite.
I really like them both. I'd probably have to flip a coin.
The debate is likely to continue, but pie isn't just for the holidays, so there's plenty of time to try both. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Saks Fifth Avenue Holiday Light Show returned this year after taking last year off. The show adds to the many holiday events in New York City that entertain locals and visitors. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
Saks Fifth Avenue Holiday Light Show makes its return for the 2025 winter season. Crowds came out to watch the display of lights, sounds, dancing, and a grand fireworks display right in Midtown Manhattan. People watched focused in awe of the colorful light display covering the Saks Fifth Avenue store.
It's excellent. They finally brought it back. They didn't do it last year. And now they finally brought it back, different soundtrack, different theme, all diamonds and all that.
So you've been to them in the past. What did you think of this compared to the older ones?
Yep, it's tough to say. They change it up every year. Every year it's excellent, the way they do it.
New York City is full of tourists just walking around and luckily find organized holiday events happening. And some know right where to look for all the best shows.
All the way from the UK to watch that Spennymoor, County Durham.
It's really nice. It's nice and bright. It reminds me of, holiday decor. So I'm excited to see it. I haven't been here in a long time.
Cold night didn't stop the public from viewing a popular holiday show favorite, one that many will return to watch again next year. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
If you have any feedback on the show or if something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at news.today@ntd.com. For round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. We'll cover more news right after this break.